Hi everybody and welcome back to The Narrative Engineer. I'm your host, Olivier, and today we are going to expand on a communication asset we introduced briefly in our previous sessions. One that I think deserves its own dedicated operational context. In our last episode, we deconstructed what I call a systematic vulnerability in modern institutional communication. We examined how overly sanitized, committee-approved corporate messaging tends to erode public trust over time. In an oversaturated information economy like we have today, audiences are no longer simply seeking raw data. Increasingly, they are looking for leaders who can step forward as authentic sense makers, people who can translate global complexity into meaningful, accessible context. If you missed that baseline analysis, you can stream episode 4 on our website or via your preferred podcast platform. So let's jump into it. In this episode, we will break down a 4-pillar engineering framework designed to help you build a high-trust audio asset for your organization. Before we look at the structural mechanics, I want to address a misconception that often gets in the way of organizations even before they begin. Too many corporate and institutional podcasts create the conditions for their own failure before they even turn on a microphone. The most common mistake is benchmarking performance against mainstream consumer-facing media. So that means measuring success through downloads, virality, and universal audience appeal. But as with every communication channel, if you build a show for everyone, well, you risk building a show for no one. If you operate as a global NGO, for example, or an international development implementer, a federal contractor, or let's say a business to government enterprise, mass market penetration is far less relevant than it might appear. You do not need 10,000 detached downloads. You need highly concentrated, high intent attention. If your core audience is a closed loop of 500 institutional donors, senior policymakers, and strategic partners, well, that is a significant win. And the conditions for that kind of reach have never been better. According to 2025 business-to-business podcasting research, 78% of business leaders now consume podcasts weekly, spending more than 54 minutes per day on audio content that directly influences their strategic thinking. The audience demographic seems to be including more seniors and educated individuals. 58% are college graduates, 56% earn more than $75,000 per year, and 53% participate directly in purchasing or funding decisions at their organizations. To be clear, what we are discussing here is not a commercial entertainment product built to attract mass sponsorships. An institutional podcast is both a sophisticated business development engine and a relationship building tool. Given the rising demand for human voices that can cut through the institutional noise, long-form conversational media forms a direct pipeline to building the kind of organizational legitimacy that a press release or a white paper simply cannot replicate. Now let us deconstruct the blueprint's 4 structural pillars. The first one is what we call the passion niche and the conviction voice. So thought leadership, at its most useful, is not about being the loudest or the most contrarian voice in a room. It is about being the most genuinely helpful voice in the room. The goal is to help your audience navigate complexity, to interpret what is unfolding in the world, to discover frameworks that they may not have encountered before, and to leave each episode with something they can actually apply to their work. A thought leader earns authority not by challenging every orthodoxy, at least not in my opinion, but by illuminating what others have left unclear. That distinction matters because it shapes how you build your show. The thematic architecture of your podcast must be anchored in authentic intellectual curiosity. Your host should demonstrate genuine investment in the operational space, so deep enough technical authority to be credible, and a real appetite for forward-looking questions and evolving ideas. That kind of sustained curiosity is a highly effective driver of audience retention. Without it, a podcast tends to drift toward corporate narration, which is precisely the trap we are trying to help you avoid. It is also worth noting that your host does not automatically need to be your chief executive, your country director, or even a member of your board. Genuine vocal authority can live anywhere within your structure. Anyone with real expertise and an articulate perspective can take the microphone. As their professional credibility carries the episode, it naturally translates into the institution's overall brand equity. If you deploy a co-hosted architecture, your thematic parameters will need careful calibration. It would need to be broad enough to sustain multi-season exploration, yet sufficiently focused to hold your core audience's attention over time. The second pillar is what we call the anti-interview format. This second pillar concerns how external voices interact with your platform. Introducing outside perspectives is a powerful tool for validating your ecosystem. But the traditional transactional Q&A model tends to undermine that potential. A 2025 analysis of over 100 business-to-business podcast programs found that shows prioritizing guest relationships over audience size generate 25 to 50% higher return on investment than those focused primarily on audience growth. In the most disciplined implementations, where guest selection is directly tied to target account strategy, guest-to-opportunity conversion rates of up to 48% have been documented in specific case studies. The reason this potential often goes unrealized comes down to a familiar pattern of institutional behavior. When you invite a high-level official or a senior partner, their communications team will instinctively request a pre-approved list of questions. If you comply and send a tightly managed script, your guest will arrive and read pre-rehearsed, risk-mitigated talking points in a flat professional tone. You have effectively produced an audio press release. The alternative is a peer-to-peer narrative exchange. Two experienced operators working through a problem they are both genuinely invested in solving. Now, before recording begins, it helps to explicitly frame this for your guest, that you're planning an unscripted, direct conversation between two professionals with real depth in the subject at hand. That framing tends to shift the dynamic pretty quickly. The resulting conversation is precisely what your target stakeholders are most likely to find credible and worth their time. The third pillar is what we call the Frontline sense maker. It establishes a direct connection between executive leadership and frontline operational reality. Because giving meaning to global development is increasingly central to modern institutional influence, your show cannot afford to operate in an isolated academic exercise. It needs to function as a reactive, real-time, sense-making vehicle that gives meaning to the events unfolding in the world. So rather than waiting weeks to publish a sanitized press release about a shifting global crisis, your podcast can respond quickly, dismantling the administrative curtain to offer your audience direct operational context. So consider, for example, what it would look like if you interrupt studio dialogue to bring in a live transmission from an active field worker. a logistics coordinator calling from an emergency distribution center, for example, or a medical technician operating on the front lines of an outbreak response. Raw, immediate human testimony provides a layer of operational credibility that a white paper just cannot replicate. It signals to your partners and stakeholders that your institution is genuinely connected to the reality on the ground, not only to policy documents and reporting cycles. An institutional podcast should not chase static, evergreen content for its own sake. Its most distinctive value lies in immediacy, the ability to contextualize global events as they unfold and to make your audience feel closer to the work than any other format can. The fourth pillar is the internal cohesion engine. It is worth recognizing that a podcast is not only an external communication vehicle. Used well, it is a powerful internal alignment mechanism. Global institutions are navigating a significant challenge on this front. According to Gallup's most recent State of the Workplace report, only 31% of employees in the United States are engaged at work. That means that nearly 7 in 10 workers feel no strong psychological connection to the organization's mission. Globally, the picture is similar, with only 21% of employees reporting engagement in Gallup's 2025 data. The implications for institutional communication are direct and pretty obvious. Your teams are actively looking for orientation, transparency, and a sense that real mission-driven people are guiding the organization forward. Distributing a strategically aligned podcast across your own internal ecosystem can serve as a meaningful unifying force. It breaks down insulated department silos. It synthesizes the work happening across geographies and teams, and it creates a consistent narrative that connects individuals to the institution's broader direction, something that emails, memos, and all staff meetings rarely accomplish with the same effect. So you now hold the structural blueprint, the passion niche and conviction voice, the anti-interview format, or the conversational format, if you will, the frontline sense maker, and the internal cohesion engine. Mastering the framework is one thing. Building the actual media infrastructure is a distinct challenge, one that requires sustained technical iteration, production resources, and operational discipline that most executive leadership teams do not have readily available. If your organization is ready to move beyond the limitations of standard institutional PR and build a genuinely authoritative digital presence, one that establishes real stakeholder trust over time, that is exactly the gap that Narrative Engineering Studio was built to close. That is it for this episode. If any of this resonated with challenges you are navigating in your own organization, I would genuinely like to hear about it. Feel free to reach out directly or leave a comment. These conversations actively shape what we explore next. If you found this useful, please subscribe, share it with a colleague who might benefit, and hit us with your feedback. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.